Hello, welcome back to the next part of the classes and object instantiation tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to take it one step further. We're going to then move into class inheritance and also cover instantiation once again, and also then move into basically building a few classes that interact with one another in order to build an example of how to use it. Accessing a database, so we're going to build an adaptable class which is going to be reusable. So basically you only have to write the code once and then you can add to it at a later stage. What this is going to do is going to connect to a database, then it's going to extract some information from a table. Basically we're going to be using a user profile. So let's just say, for example, someone's logged into your website and they want to edit their profile. And then we can just save the data. So that's basically what we'll do. We're going to make a simple little form with the first and last name, email address, age, all the normal stuff, and just basically make a little bit of functionality with it. That should cover maybe an hour, 15 minutes, but we're going to push through it. The key piece of information here is that we're going to make these few classes. If you've never worked with any databases before, then we're going to be covering this in quite in depth as well, although it's more to do with how the classes are built, but you will have a good understanding of how we're going to use the different methods in PHP to extract data from a database, store it into objects. Basically throughout this whole tutorial we're going to be using the object orientation with PHP. Okay, so without further ado, let's move on. Firstly, what I would like to say is that I posted the first hour and 3 minute long tutorial yesterday, and I'm so happy with the feedback which you guys gave me within minutes of me posting this tutorial on YouTube. So therefore, next day I decided, well, I'm going to do another one for you guys, and hopefully we're going to keep doing this maybe a few over the next few days. Don't quite know yet. Anyway, this tutorial is specifically done for one person. Alright, I had a request this afternoon to do this tutorial about this, so if you know who you are, this is for you, and take notes, alright, and hope you learn. Okay, so let's move on, and let's make sure you listen, okay, and hopefully you watch this more than once. But the important factor on this is that you need to keep this code clean, right, and save it somewhere, because you can just use it time and time again. Alright, okay, so we've got a simple index.php file at the moment. Now we're actually not really going to code anything on here for the time being. We're actually just going to make a couple of classes first of all. So what I've got set up already is a new database. So if you've got if you're running Apache, or you've actually got your MySQL database, then you're going to want to make a database and enable to make a few tables. So we'll start off just by coming here. Let's change this, because this is all in German, so let's change that over. It's nasty. And let's change this. Okay, there we go. So now that's in German, in English rather. Okay, so we're just going to make a database with a simple table. First column is we're going to have as ID. Now I'm going to use all camel case in here, and ID I'm going to use all uppercase. It's just basically because what I want to be able to have the column names, the key names, exactly the same, use the same name as what we're going to use in the classes. Right, and I just find it's cleaner to use the likes of camel case. If you don't know what camel case is, that's mean it's, let me just show you quickly. Right, so if we have a class name or something name, user profile information, it just, as you can see here, the first letter in every single word we use in a capital letter. Okay, this is camel case. A lot of programming languages, you don't have to code it like this, but a lot of them use this, especially through the .NET framework. Okay, Microsoft pretty much swears by it. Okay, so that's basically how we're going to do it. So let's mosey on back to here. Now the first column which we're going to make is name. We're just going to set that as varchar. okay, and length of 255, so we've got the maximum amount of length. Let's add, say, another, let's say 6 for now, maybe we don't use them all, but okay, then the next one we'll put in surname, and once again we'll say varchar 255, and then we'll say email, and once again, you guessed it, 255, and then we'll say phone, and we're going to use varchar once again 255, and then age we're going to use as then an integer, and then what should we do next? We'll do let's just do, what should we do? Country. Oh, let's do country and varchar as well. No, we'll do integer actually. We'll make a separate table for that. And then the final one is, what we're going to do is, I'm a big fan of Microsoft. Microsoft loves their user coding and so on, so we're going to have a PUID. If you don't know what that is in Microsoft terminology, it's a personal unique identification number. Okay, so that's going to be a varchar as well. It's just basically going to be a hash that we're going to build. And actually we're going to set one more in as well. Put one more here, and we're just going to put this down as session ID. Okay, so we've got then the actual session that they're going to be using, and then the PUID as well. Okay, right, so let's save this up, and hopefully this is not a number. No, we don't want that. We want varchar in there, and that one in there. Okay, so let's save this. Missing value in form. Where did I miss that? Okay, primary key and auto increments. Where am I missing this? Ah, yeah, table name. It's always good. There we go. See, all done now. So now we've got our users table. Now let's also put some information in it. So ID we can leave blank, and we're just going to say David Thorne, and we'll say info@thornewebdesign.com. Phone, we'll just say 0123456789. Age 33. Country, we'll just say UK. PUID, oh yeah, country 1. And PUID, we'll set a hash and a session ID later once we save it for the first time. So let's just press go, and we'll save that in there. Now we've got the one user in there. Okay, so that's that bit done. Now we've just got basically our index.php here, and we come now to our project. And someone asked me yesterday, what program am I using here? And this is NetBeans IDE. All right, it's released by Java. Okay, you can get it on the Java websites. So it's a pretty good program. I don't really want to get into that right now, but it's a good program to use. Okay, just for indication here, this source files and this index path is the program folders. So you don't actually have to make any of these folders itself. It's just part and parcel of the program. Okay, but what we are going to do is make a new folder, and we're going to call this lib, as in for library, and then we're going to make another one called CSS, and then we don't need an images one. We're also going to make one called that includes as well, if we spell it correctly. And once again, if we spell it correctly, and even once again. Okay, that's it done there. Right, next thing what we want to do now is we're going to basically make some logic, and within inside the lib directory we're going to make a few other folders, and what we're going to say here is logic. Alright, inside of this is going to be our main like say core object class. We'll cover this later on, but we're just making the file system first of all. Now also what we're going to do is then have the database folder, and all information regarding database is going to sit under here, and then we're then going to say, well actually that's pretty much it for now with that, but then what we want to have is basically our classes. Alright, because This library is the actual library which you're going to copy and use all the time, and the classes here is the actual business logic for, let's call it, the website which you're going to build. So the library folder, you will always copy and paste and move it all the way around, and when you update it, then you'll update this library itself. So it's one-time coding, and then you can update it whenever you need to update it to make it better. So the first thing we're going to start off with is making a logic class. Right, like I said, this is going to be the core class which we're going to use all the time. Right, so we're going to name this logic, and it's going to be logic.php, and we're actually going to come back to here and put this to lowercase because I don't want that uppercase. Okay, so let's come over to here and just then get rid of all this rubbish here. Don't want that. Okay, and what we're also going to do is have another file, another class here. Actually, we don't want a class, we just want to have a PHP file, and we're going to call this defines. Alright, now this defines, you'll see shortly what it's going to do. Okay, well, let's actually do it now. What we're going to do is we're going to define a few pieces of information, so it's going to shorten our code just by starting off basically by saying ds, which is going to be then the directory separator, and this should come up on here for us. There we go. Now also what we're going to define then is the document.root, and we're just going to call this all in capitals all the time, and we're going to just call it root. So we're going to use then the server superglobal, and get it done properly here, and we'll say document underscore root. So that means every single time we want to access the document root, we just have to type root now. Now what I want to have also is then the library, the lib folder, so I never really want to have to retype this. So let's type define once again, and we'll call this all capital letters the lib root. Okay, and we'll come here, and then we can use the roots, and then we can say dot. Actually, we don't need a directory separator there, and then we can just say lib. Alright, and then we're going to put a directory separator on the end. So now we have the lib roots. What we also want to do is basically have the actual logic file as well. I don't really want to have to write this all the time, and I want to know that I can grab it straight away. Alright, so what we need to do now is say lib root, which is there, and then just grab this logic.php. Alright, so anytime now we need the logic file, we just got to say logic, that's it. Alright, so that should do for now, I believe. If there's anything more, then we'll come back later on. Okay, what we're also going to have is, believe it or not, if we're going to make kind of a framework, then we want kind of a framework file, naturally. So let's make now the framework.php, and this is the one thing that we're always just going to include all the time. Alright, now if we're going to include the framework.php, then we want to require once, because we only want it once, is then the defines. Alright, because we want to make sure that prior to any code being used, the defines are always there. Okay, it makes sense, kind of. And now within inside of our index.php, what we want to have now is the framework also included. Now, in order for us to have the defines included, we've got to go straight to the lib folder, okay, and then grab the framework.php, because obviously the defines has been required within inside the framework.php. Okay, so now we have all of the accessibility from the other classes, or the other one class that we've just made. So just to make sure we haven't got any errors, which we don't, everything's working. So let's mosey on back to here. Now, okay, the class logic. This is going to be the main root to all of our objects. So if we want all of our classes to have a method or a property, then we're going to add it through the logic, because all of our classes are pretty much going to extend the logic, so we can give it lots and lots of functionality with only declaring them once over. Okay, so let's now then write some logic in here, shall we? So let's just say public, and we can make this code slightly bigger, public function, and we're going to define the constructor in here. Now also what we're going to do is, because this is something which I'm going to add later, we're going to say public, and we're then going to say db, alright, and we're going to say this is equal to null initially, and we're going to initialize this shortly. Now another thing which I want to have is something where you can always grab a property from an object quickly, rather than using a great function which is available to within inside PHP, but we're going to use the get function, alright, which we're making right now. Now what we want to do is basically say the property which we want to get, right, by default, and then we're going to say the object which we're going to get it from is also going to be a second optional argument, just in case we're just using the property exist function, which I'm going to show you now. So basically what we're going to come over to is use the built-in PHP function of property exists, and I wrote it wrong then. Let's let this do it, class. Okay, so we can add then the object into here, and then we've got property here. So now if this property exists, then what we can do is return object, and then if that's going to write it for me, property. Okay, so that's basically taking it's finding this property within inside of this object. Now at this time we're not testing whether the object is actually available, therefore this would cause an error. So what we're actually going to do in the beginning is we're going to say this. So we're actually going to test whether this property is available within inside this instance of this class, and if it is, we're then going to return it. Okay, if it's not, so that one can pretty much end. Right, and then we can change the object, because that's incorrect, and change it to this property. Now if it's not available, well, if it is available, then the code's going to end here, and it's going to return it, so it's not going to move on anyway. Now if it doesn't exist, then what we can say is if object, alright, because possibly if this object has been provided as an optional argument, then it's more than likely not going to be with inside this. Alright, so it's going to skip this one anyway, and this one, the property exists, is going to return false. Therefore it's going to move on to this, and there should be no reason to do anything further finding properties in this. Therefore we can test if object is actually exists within inside of the function. Alright, so just say if object, and then what we can do is say if property exists, and then we can say this time object and property. Now if it does, then we're going to return object once again, and then property if it writes it for me. Okay, so now we're going to return object property. Now if it doesn't exist, what about if we check if property exists, but we use this time as, well, that's the wrong function completely. Property exists, and this time we use this, and then we say object, and first of all we're going to test if the object itself is a property of this, and if it is, then what we're going to do is then we're going to say if property first of all, and then we're going to say this object, and then we're going to test the, so now we know that the object is a property of this. Now we're going to check if the property that's being entered into the function, to the method, is a property of object which is a property of this. Okay, it might sound confusing, but it's actually not. And then we're going to return this object property. Okay, and if it doesn't work from there, then pretty much the code doesn't work. Alright, so we can then come down to here and we're just going to say return false, because if it gets to here, then it's already not working. Alright, and if it gets to here, it's not working, and once again here, so we might as well just return false. Okay, there's no need to do lots of else statements and so on to test for nothing. Alright, so that's our first get function. Now we don't need to call any parent underscore construct on here because it hasn't been extended by anything at the moment. Now let's just test. Well, no, we can leave that for now. This one is working fine. Okay, so the next thing that we've got to do is we've got our get, and we're going to make a set property later, but we're going to actually get some of the main business logic done first. Alright, so if you want to spend just a second or two having a look at this, alright, just for clarity here with this file, you've got class logic and then the curly braces, and then you've got the closing curly braces here. Alright, so the code that needs to be inside of it is this here. If you want to take a second and make certain that you've got all this code written down properly, then I suggest pause the video right now. Okay, good. So as long as this is all looking exactly the same as mine, right, we're only actually using one method so far, and that's property exists. Alright? Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our database folder, and we're now going to make our connection class. Alright? This is going to be called the database.php there, and then as I did before, I'm going to rename this to lowercase. Come to our database class here, and we're going to get rid of all of this and get rid of all of this here. And this isn't going to extend anything either, alright? Because I need this to be able to be a standalone class that doesn't need to rely on any other class, because otherwise you just get kind of lots of looping around in circles if you're always calling a parent constructor and so on. Therefore, it just needs to run on its own, alright? Okay, so what we make is going to a public function, and then with a construct as well. So let's see if that does it for us. Yes, good, fantastic. Right, there's nothing much that it needs to go in there, but what we do need to have is some parameters for this. Okay, now with inside the construct, what we're going to do is we're going to make an optional parameter of database. Now with inside of the class, we're going to make a few properties itself, and we're going to say database equals null, and as you can see, I'm using camel case here, as in the first letter of every single word capitalized. And then the next thing what we're going to have is then host equals null, and I think you can see the pattern here is then we're going to have username equals null, and then we're going to have password equals null, and that's pretty much everything that we need so far. Now what we're going to have also is we're going to just call this some tester properties, okay, which are going to tell us whether things are connected, whether stuff is working. So what we're going to have is a one called is connected, and we're going to set this as false initially, and then we're going to have something called the resource. Alright, and there we go. So what the resource is going to do is once it's connected, we're just going to save it in here. Alright, so if we ever need to use it at a later stage, then we just need to access the resource itself, which is the connection. Alright, now what we could actually do is just say make that static, so we could access it statically all the time, which means it's used, that it's saved and it's not regenerated every single time. That's the last thing that we want, is to have to make a new connection every single time. All right, but potentially we're not, so we're just going to save the database. I'm going to show you as we move along. All right, so the first function which we need naturally is to have is a connect function, if we can spell function correctly. Now, what we're going to have here is within inside the connect function. What we don't want to do is, actually, I'm going to change my mind. We're going to have here, we're going to have a host, because this is the initial connection of the database, so I can understand that it's quite alright for us to do this. Right, and password and so on. Now, we're not going to have a database here because I want the functionality to do the database here, and we're also going to make another function. All we're going to do really is mirror the PHP functions, but we're just making them a little bit more word friendly and so on. Okay, so what we need to do is then basically say, is this resource. Just going to do it. Actually, I'm going to change this because I've just decided that we're going to have it as that. This dot resource is MySQL connect, and then we can just say host. Should get it, yes. Username, yes, and password, yes. Okay, that's all we need there. Now what we're going to do is a quick check if this resource, so in other words, if this is connected, then we can say this is connected equals true. Alright, so we now know it's connected. Otherwise, we're going to return false. Alright, so now with inside here, we can just say return true, so we know we're telling the method, hey, you're now finished. Alright, so that's it now connected. Let's clean this up. Now what we're going to have is another function as well, saying select DB, right, and we're going to say database in here. So this is actually changing the database itself. Now we could do this up here, but we need to have this method first of all in order to be able to configure this. All right. Now, realistically speaking, what we need to test for up here, and we'll do it later, is basically say if database, to test if it's there, then we're going to say this database equals that. Alright, now with inside the database here, what we're going to do first of all is say if this database, okay, then once again we're actually going to reset it once again, and we're going to say if database is equal to this database, then we're going to then we want to have if this database is not equal to this database, then we're going to say we're going to update it with the new information, else we're going to say it's then this database and continue on. Alright, so all we're basically saying is they might have initiated the database here and said what they want, but at a later stage we're deciding to change it. Alright, now we've got the database up here, and what we want to do is also then test just in case, and this data is not equal to null. Alright, because obviously up here it's null already, and so we just want to check both times if it's either null or if it's also true. Okay, potentially, yeah, it's not much of a requirement, but by checking that it's not equal to null, it's just being on the safe side. So at the moment, to this database, if this one here, let's just rather than say that this, if the database argument is not equal to the class property of this database, then we're going to update it to database. Otherwise, we're going to continue on with database. All right. Otherwise, we're basically can just make the assumption here, and we're going to say return true on this, because this should now all be okay. Yeah, that's it. And otherwise we're going to return false, okay? Because to be quite honest with you, if yeah, no, that's all fine. That's all fine. Okay, so that's now returned false. Now what we want to do on here is what we're going to make someone do is connect, and then we're going to make someone select DB as well. But what we could do is be kind of proactive about this, okay, and put database on here as well. And we're going to say false here. Now, if this is connected is equal to true, which is good, okay, what we could do is say if database was inside here, okay, now we can just run this select database. Okay, so if we know, if someone has actually said, well, what I'll do is I'll add it into the connect as well, because I know what database I'm going to be using. Well, if they do know it, let's get that semicolon because that's horrible. Okay, if they have provided it, then we'll select the database already here for them. Okay, so it's all nice and easy. Okay, otherwise we'll just skip it. Okay, so that's that basically for now. This is pretty much our database class done. Now, like I said, I don't want to extend anything with this database. Now, one thing what we're going to do is we're going to flick back to our defines, alright? And what we're going to do is we're going to define one more thing, okay? And this is going to be called execute, alright? And we're just going to make this set to true, okay? Just to initialize it. That's all. Now, why are we going to do this? Because what we're going to have here is because the framework has got to be required, it's got to be running prior to any of these files working. So what we're going to have up here is we're going to say if defined, and we're going to check it there, if defined, otherwise we're going to say die, alright? And we'll say you do not have access to this file. Alright, so all that's pretty much going to do is it's going to check if execute is defined, otherwise it's just going to kill the script completely. And with inside defines here, we can't run it yet, but with inside our logic, the logic is going to have it already required, and our index.php isn't. We always need to let someone access this. Okay, so let's go back to the database one quickly, and okay, starting from the top, so we've got this file here, okay, and then we've got the class opening up here, and then the closing one down here. Okay, so if you just want to take a quick, make sure you get all of this stuff done. So if you get the properties copied first, okay, and the file's name is database.php. Okay, then give you a chance to get the connect function copied, okay, and give you a quick chance to get the select database function copied. And once you've done all of this, then we can move on. Okay, good. So now we've got all of these things. Are you confused yet by this? I hope not. Okay, so now we've got the framework done, the defines done, the logic done, and the database done, and we're knocking 33 minutes already, which is great. But the rest of it's going to be pretty fast because we're doing this. So now what we need to have is an actual MySQL one as well, just to do the logic behind the database. So let's come to the project, and we're going to make then another PHP class, and we're going to call this, all in low, let's change it in a second, MySQL. Alright, now let's come back here and just, that's all fine there, and let's change this, and we'll do this. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to extend logic in here, alright, because this is how I want it to extend. And we can copy this from our other files and place them inside the MySQL one, which is there. Now, okay, the one thing that we have to remember is we need the logic file as well. Now we had this because we can say require once, and all we've got to do now is basically say, whoops, logic. As you can remember, in our defines, we defined it here as logic, which is included in this one file. Now, if we come, this is obviously the first one that we're using, we're extending the logic. Okay, now what we've got to do here is, because we want to be able to call the constructor of the parent class, we're going to come here and call the parent class. So we've got all the functionality. Now, inside of this, it gives us the gets and a few other properties as well. Now, to not forget, what we need to do is for the database also, we actually need to connect to it. Now, we've got all this information. What we want to have between our actual user's profile one is we want to have an adapter. Okay. Now this MySQL one is just going to do some work for us. Okay, nothing more. Now, actually, what we're going to do is, I've just decided there, we're going to change this slightly, because what I want to have, and we're going to change this. This logic is actually going to do the connection for us. All right, and what we're going to call it is the adapter. All right, adapter. Okay, and what I also want to have within inside of the logic as well, actually within inside the lib directory, is another PHP class, and what we're going to call this is config. Right, so this is going inside of the actual lib folder itself called config, and this is going to be another class called config. Now we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to make it like this. Now, with inside of the config, this is where we're going to basically have some public properties. All right, and once again, they're going to be called username. So let's go back to our database, and let's just copy this info. All right, and we'll just chuck it in here because I don't want to rewrite it out again. Right, and now let's come back to the database and let's copy this as well. Okay, with inside of our framework, what I want to do is, we've got the defines, and I want to be able to include this once already. Okay, so we want config.php. all right, because we're going to need this. Now, with inside the config.php, all we're going to have is, we don't really even need a constructor, but what we are going to do, just for the sake of it, is we're not going to do that one there. We're going to define a constructor as well. Alright, now in here, potentially what's going to happen is, you're going to actually say, you're going to put all of the information inside of here, hard coding it. Alright, so the database which we're going to use is YouTube, and the host, believe it or not, like all others, is going to be localhost, and username, you guessed it, is root, and then password, you guessed it again, is nothing. Now this is not very safe, log into a database, but if you're using a local host, then it's fine, it's on your computer. Otherwise, you need to make certain that you have a strong password and strong username. Okay, so at this time, everything's all okay. While we're getting an error there, public function construct, shouldn't be like that. Host, oh, we're missing one there. There we go. Okay, so now all this basically means is we can access these, and I wanted them public because we need to be able to access them nice and easily. Okay, so now we have the config required with inside of here. Now our framework basically needs to say, well, wait a minute, we need to first of all require our logic file. Okay, so let's go ahead and require now logic. Alright, now that we've got the logic, well, the logic itself here now needs a database. Alright, so what we've got to do is define require once, and what we want to have is the MySQL, the database itself. Alright, so because we're actually going to fire the database, and we're going to save it in there, and we're going to save this class with the functionality that we need. But it's only going to be a connection. Our MySQL is actually going to be the one that's going to do everything for us, but the MySQL adapter needs to have a connection also. Alright, so now within inside our database, in the construct, you can see that we've got within inside of our construct we've got here, but we've also got the connect. So it is a little bit confusing, alright, but I've got it in my head. So what we're going to do is basically we're going to extend the database, alright, so which means we've got to require once. Now let's see where that was lib and then database, then database. So we come here and we just say lib root, which it was, yeah, and then we say database, directory separator, and then database.php. So now we know that this has been extended. So this MySQL adapter now has basically all of the functionality which the database has. Now for our MySQL, we now need to have a database within inside of the constructor, which we can then pass into the other constructor. Now it doesn't matter, because if this is not passed in, the database is going to be false, and it's going to pass in here, which is still going to be false with inside of the database one. So it's no problem. Okay. So with inside of our framework now, we've required logic itself. Now let's have a look at logic here. What we need to have now is the database itself, because the database doesn't extend logic, so we need to include it ourselves. But what we only need to do is require the MySQL adapter, because the MySQL adapter is already requiring the database file itself, so it will come with the MySQL one. Okay, so let's put this over here like this, and then we'll just say MySQL, because that's what the name of the file was here. Okay, so let's just make sure we've got logic required. With inside here we've got the framework required. Let's see how many million errors we get. Require once, tutorials, logic. Okay, so what we do need in here is in the defines, in our root, we actually need to have something else, which you won't need to do this, but because I've got the folder just like this, we need to change this like that. But if you've got it on a normal website as the main root folder, then you won't need to do this. But just for the sake of the arguments of this, I'm going to have to do it so it works. Alright? Okay, is that in the right one? Oh, of course. Silly me. There we go. Where are we going? We're going to framework. Defines. It's libroot, then logic, and that was without a capital. And I just forgot to put a folder on it, that's all. So let's come and try again. Okay, no errors, which is great. So let's come over to our index.php, which means now we have included within inside of our framework, we have logic, which now it's time to add our database into this. So let's just say db first of all equals new MySQL adapter, and we're not going to say anything in there, just for the sake of seeing whether it's all okay there. Now we come here and say logic equals new logic, just to check if we've got any errors. No, great. And we should have, if we come to logic now, which is there, and what we're going to do here, right, which is the clever thing, we're going to say this db equals MySQL adapter. now come to index.php, and all we're going to do is we're going to echo out pre, okay, to pre-format the text, and we're going to say print R, just to have a look at what stuff we've got inside of it. Okay, and now as you can see here, our logic object, let's zoom in slightly, has now got a database already connected. As you can see here, the database, the host, username, password is connected, and resource. Alright, so what we've actually got to continue to do now is come back to our logic, and we've got to update the information as well with config. Now the config was required with inside of the framework. So we come to here, and we're going to say config equals new config. There it is. Okay. Now with inside of our adapter, we can say this db connect, and we can say config, and we can say host config username config and password. So now that should have connected. So let's see whether we've got any errors. And we've got no errors, and we've got resource ID. Okay, this basically means that the database, it has connected with the database because we have the resource ID. Otherwise, we'd have got we've got problems, and we can see that is connected is now 1. So we know that we are connected, which means we have a database connection, which is all good stuff. Right. This is moving into now 46 minutes. We're taking a long time on this, but it's no problem. We can do another tutorial after this. So, okay, but this is important to continue on, because it's going to assist you a lot more than having a user profile which you can make. This is going to be far quicker once you've done it, to do time and time again. But let's crack on. All right. So now we've got the database file which has been done, and we've got select DB. So what we need to do now is basically within inside of our logic, just for simplicity, in here we're going to say YouTube, all right, to actually connect to the database as well, all right, which is all, once again, all fine. So let's come over to our database, and just to double check, okay, is we're going to make a private one in here, say DB open, so database open equals false, and come here. If we've got a select database, we actually forgot to do this as well, MySQL select database, and we're going to say this database, and we'll say if MySQL select database, then this database open equals true. So now let's come back over to here, and we've got database open is nothing there, so select DB there, if database. Okay, let's just pump out some. Did we connect already in that? Yes, we've connected there. So let's just let it go high. See whether we've got anything going in there. No. Okay, so it's not got to that spot. So let's just see whether we've got down here. See that we've got high, which is fine. Okay, so something in this didn't work. Let's just check this. Okay, obviously it still didn't work there. If this database, look, because it's not been set yet, is it, lunatic? Actually, no, that's right. If not this database, well, no, that's wrong. This database is equal to that. That's kind of no relevance then, this bit. This database equals that. Okay, we can do the other testing afterwards to see if it's if the database has already been set. but let's come back to here. We should get hi, and now we've got database open as well, which is good stuff. Okay, that's the database now connected. Now what we want to have to do is basically make the MySQL adapter, right, to give it a little bit of functionality. Now, because we've got the database connected on here, okay, which we can see here, sorry, we're going to give it some methods now, alright? So we're going to make a public function, and we're just going to do a quick query, and what we're going to say is we're going to say set query, and this is going to be equal to, and have a parameter, an argument, I keep saying that, of query. So nice and simple. First of all, let's check if query. We're not going to do any regular expressions to check it, because we're all great PHP programmers, and we're going to basically put in the correct query first time. So all we're going to say is if right, what we want to have up here first of all is we're going to say private, and this is then going to be equal to query equals null. Alright, so that's going to save the query for us, and we're going to check here if query, and we only want to query it once. So this query equal to MySQL MySQL query, and we're going to say query in here. Now if this, oops, now I'm going to say it in here, if this query, then we know that the query's been the query's correct, and I'm going to say return true. Alright, else we're going to return false. Okay, now just to quickly get this done, we're going to make another public function and say we're going to call this get row. Alright, now because this query has already been done, we're going to say if this query, so we now know it's correct, yeah, which is fine. We're basically going to say in here we're going to store then the row, okay, and we're going to make this public as well. Row equals null. Alright, and we're going to say this row is equal to MySQL fetch object, okay, and we're going to say this query, okay, which we know that has been saved. Actually, sorry, we're going to say this resource. We didn't use that in here, did we? Yes, we did. Okay, and then we'll change this to DB resource. I'm going to change that to DB resource here. I'm going to change all of these because I need to use the resource once again. Okay, so that's a little bit of a mistake on my side. Okay, this resource, now this is going to be the resource which we're going to use all the time. So if the resource will return. Now the resource has been saved, so let's save it up there. But we want to save as well the actual query as well, the query string as such. Okay, just in case we want to use it later. So we can now say this query equals query. Alright, so if we have to use it later, we've got it saved. Is row. Now let's just check to see whether if is object. I'm going to get this for me. No, don't want that one. I want row. Then return this row. Okay. Else we've got a problem, so we're going to return false. All right. So let's now test this. So we've got logic, and we should be able to then say, and we've got DB, and we actually haven't added that yet to our logic. Database connect, and 1 second, we've got the DB's logic, MySQL adapter as well. Yep, which is all good. Get row, set query, that's all there. Oh, come on. Set query. Everything from, and what do we name it? Named it users, that was pretty obvious, wasn't it? So let's just select everything from users and then see whether this is actually even going to work. I've got a feeling somehow it's not going to work. Because I believe I've done something wrong here, because we're not getting the information which we want. Okay, just for real ease here, what we're going to do is we're going to do something completely different and shut this off for a second. Wait a minute. Yep, that's called the construct. Logic has been called the construct from the constructor there, which is all good. We've now got the DB connection, which is all good. Let's make certain that we've got the connection here, which is not for some reason. Why haven't we got... Oh, 1 second. Right, pause the video 2 minutes. Okay, I found the error. Stupid error here. I forgot to rename or put this as resource. Okay, that's why it was so important. That's why it's not working. Okay, but otherwise I did a little bit of debugging here using get class methods. Okay, just to basically list out all of the information from logic DB. All right, and if I come to here to show you, okay, this is the information which we get. So we can see set query, get row, connect, select DB. Obviously connect comes from database, and the construct comes from database, and the other ones come from the MySQL adapter class which we've made. Okay, so that's basically that bit done. Now we can print R on here, and just to show you what information we've got from the database itself. And as you can see here, we've got a standard class with all the information with inside of the row. Okay, quick thing to do now then, and is we're going to say public function, and we're going to call it num rows. Okay, and we're going to say if this resource and this row, okay, return MySQL num rows this resource. Okay, nice and simple. Okay, basically by saying this row, we're just confirming that we've got some success. Okay, and we're not going to get any errors. Okay, so now let's do another quick function in here, and then let's say public rows, okay, which is going to be that. And what we'll just leave num rows first of all. Okay, so what we want to have here now is a public function, okay, get rows. Now we're already going to have our query set from set query. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make our rows an array. Okay, so first of all, this rows equals an array, and we're just going to initiate that. Now we say first of all, if this resource, so we know that we actually have a resource, and we're going to say while row is equal to MySQL fetch objects, and I'm a big fan of using fetch object rather than associate or array. Okay, I just like working with objects more. Okay, we're then going to say this rows, and what we're going to do is well, we're going to leave it for now, but we could put the ID in there, and we're just going to say this rows equals row. Okay, and then for simplicity at the end we're going to say return this rows. Okay, so let's now come back to our database, and we can still test this with one row, and instead we'll say get rows, and it should still work, and we've got the array. So let's, for a bit of fun, let's put this one back, come to our users table, insert another one, and just say James Thomas, email james@test.com, phone 1234 whatever, age 25, country 2, PUID we're going to leave, and so on. So let's press go, we save that, come back to here, refresh, and we've got the 2 rows now. Okay, so that's all nicely working. Right, so now what we have is we have a MySQL adapter. We also have the logic with the configuration as well. So we've got everything nicely split down, and if we add anything to our functions, then basically it's just passing down the information. Now, just to finalise on this, and I'm going to make another video to continue on, because this is an important part of learning PHP. Now, logic is the main base class, okay, which if I give logic a method here, it will just run all the way down to the children, and they'll all receive that one function basically, and the property. Alright, now because at the top level I've given it a database as well, it means that every single class that you have has been provided with a database. Now at one point you could then do this connect function inside the framework as well. So if you wanted to in some websites you don't want to connect to a database, which is going to be pretty rare, then you could do it that way. But I'm pretty much always use a database, therefore I would just connect it at the logic level. But I have my own framework which I've built, but this is the method which we're going to use as of today. Okay, so that's about it. Alright, please don't worry about it, there's going to be another video coming. It's more than likely going to be tomorrow, because by the time I've actually got this video all ready to go onto YouTube for you guys today, then it's going to be too late. Alright, I'm sorry that we didn't get to the user profile bit, but don't worry, we can move on to that in the next one. Just make sure you can get all of this code written down and watch it again. So if I could just give you a quick snapshot now of all of the code which you need to have. So here's now, if we go one by one, here's the logic one. Alright, okay, and that's the public method, or the get method, sorry, and then you've got the construct, public DB, okay, logic at the top, and then the closing at the bottom, and then these 2 bits at the top. The define, we need to have this, defines, framework is having this, let's just zoom in for you. Okay, database will come out slightly. Okay, so we want to open and close the database class here, and then have the following properties here. Okay, and then we want to have the constructor, i.e. like this, then the connect function like this, and then the select DB function like this. This is then the database file, which is located in the database folder, with inside the lib folder, with inside the root. Okay. Now the MySQL, it then uses these two at the beginning. Alright. Now it opens up with class MySQL Adapter extends database, and then obviously has the opening, the closing curly braces, and then we've got 4 private properties here: constructor, set query, get row, get rows, none rows. Okay, our config is the main configuration where you're going to put all your database information. So there we go, make sure you define it as well, put the information in, and the construct for the time being doesn't have anything. Index.php, most important thing that you have is the require once the framework directory. Okay, and then the rest is just testing. So as long as you can get to here, our database has 1 table in it. Okay, and this is what it's supposed to look like. So we've got 9 columns: ID, name, surname, email, phone, age, country, PUID, session ID. 1 is integer, and then that's also auto increments, and it's then the primary key. Varchar 255, Varchar 255, Varchar 255, Varchar 255, int 11, int 11, Varchar 255, Varchar 255, and so on. So that's basically it for the time being. And remember that this one website at the moment is within a subfolder. Okay, therefore inside of your defines you won't have to bother using this. Okay, all right, that's it for the time being for today. That's an hour and 6 minutes of my time and your time. I really appreciate you guys listening. I'm assuming, well, you're watching me on YouTube. If you're watching me on any other websites already, do me a favour, let me know which website it is. I'm more than happy that other people share my videos and place them on other websites, but just give me a little bit of feedback so I can come and visit them and see what they're like. Alright, otherwise come to me at Facebook, facebook.com/Thorn Design. Okay, otherwise you come and visit me personally at facebook.com/Thorn Web Design. Alright, so I'm me personally, my own David Thorn profile is at Thorn Web Design, and Facebook for my Thorn Web Design is at Thorn Design. Yeah, I can't change it anymore. So anyway, thanks very much guys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, good night.